to topic 1.1, Ideals of Democracy. First thing are the four democratic ideals: natural rights, social contract, popular sovereignty, and limited government. If you understand these ideals and how they connect to the structure of the US government, Unit 1 will make a lot more sense. Limited government is ensured by these four structured principles: separation of powers, checks and balances, federalism, and republicanism. I started republicanism because I want to focus on that for a quick second. Not to be confused with values or the ideology of the Republican Party today in politics, the grand old party, the GOP, but rather the republicanism is the belief system that our framers created a representative republic, not a direct democracy, which is actually a common misconception. Okay, that us citizens, we elect representatives on our behalf to make decisions such as laws, pieces of legislation, and other political decisions in the democratic process, okay? And that's done by voting on election day. The framers created a representative republic because they feared that it would lead, not having that would lead to tyranny and mob rule, and that power must be separated into three separate branches, another one of the structured principles. Separation of powers, checks and balances, understanding how all of that works in our government today is really the main focus of Unit 2, but the baseline is set here pretty early in Unit 1. So how are these democratic ideals reflected in foundational documents that you need to know for the course in the exam? The first one is Declaration of Independence. Not to be confused, Declaration of Independence is a philosophical document. It provides no governance or structure to the US government today. It served as inspiration from the Enlightenment movement when Jefferson wrote it, but it serves no weight in terms of governance and making decisions like the Constitution does. So we see natural rights. Jefferson includes Locke's famous life, liberty, and property, or rather pursuit of happiness, and declaring these rights to be unalienable, meaning they can't be taken away. They're given to you by God. And really, the Declaration of Independence is arguing that King George III actually violated these moral codes, these moral rights, by not allowing the colonists to have life, liberty, and property, or pursuit of happiness. The next democratic ideal we can see in the Declaration of Independence is popular sovereignty. So instead of power coming down from this higher being or this monarch like King George, authority is flowing upward from the people to the government that they chose to build, aka consent of the governed. So a representative republic. We, the people, are voting to put people in power to make decisions on our behalf. And here's an exam tip. If you're ever asked to connect a foundational document to an ideal, the Declaration of Independence will almost always be the answer, because we see right here two really good examples of natural rights and popular sovereignty. You can also make the argument for limited government and social contract, but I just pointed these two out as being the most obvious. The next foundational document is the Constitution. Popular sovereignty, probably the most obvious one, is the opening lines, the preamble: we the people. Power comes from the people, not states or a monarch like King George. It comes from us, consent of the governed. Social contract, the preamble actually has 6 goals, and it also includes an amendment process, which is Article 5. Again, that's talked more about in other units and other areas throughout the course, but it's mentioned here early on. The preamble actually lays out goals: establishing justice, providing defense, equity, equality, etc. I just listed 2 to kind of get you familiar with them. Article 5 allows us, the people, through state and federal representatives, people that we elected on our behalf, to amend the governing contract when necessary, aka adding amendments to the Constitution. It's a whole process in terms of the proposal and ratification, which we can get into more in Unit 2. All right, I left a little tip here. The Constitution itself separates power into 3 separate branches, going back to one of the structured principles that I mentioned earlier. Again, that is a big focus of Unit 2. The Bill of Rights was actually later added to protect our individual liberties, such as due process and freedom of speech, freedom of religion. That was a big compromise that the Federalists and Anti-Federalists created during the ratification process. The last foundational document you can find democratic ideals in, it's new, effective this fall, the Gettysburg Address. So Lincoln acknowledges that a government limited by the will of its people is fragile. So we're talking about limited government here. And a constitutional democracy relies on voluntary compliance and shared ideals. So the United States is an example. And by fighting to preserve a limited government, the Union, the North, was proving that a free, self-limiting society is strong enough to survive even a massive internal crisis such as the Civil War. In popular sovereignty, Lincoln breaks down the democratic relationship. Probably the best example we see of popular sovereignty in the Gettysburg Address is when he mentions in a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's probably one of the best examples in human history, I would say. So he's breaking down the democratic process, relationship. And what does all that mean? Of the people, government is made up of citizens themselves. By the people, citizens participate in the democratic process by choosing their leaders and laws, voting on them. And for the people, government's sole purpose is to serve the public good. It does not serve its own interests, it does not serve the interest of a particular state or a particular individual like a monarch. Again, you could also make the argument for other democratic ideals, but these were two really obvious ones that were sticking out to me. Here are key takeaways for topic 1.1, and pay close attention to the hint there at the bottom that is highlighted. In an exam, on a test, a quiz, you may be asked to identify an ideal connected to the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution and explain how a structured principle protects it.